Welcome to Zooming to Webinar Success. If you're needing to plan a virtual meeting and are stuck, this series is for you. Full-time voice artist Grant Holmes is also a busy virtual meeting manager and on-screen host. Learn tips and tricks to having successful virtual meetings from step one. And now, here's your host, Grant Holmes, the webinar guy.
Hey, this is Grant, that webinar guy. That's what my clients call me anyhow. The webinar guy, whatever. Welcome to episode 21 of Zooming to Webinar Success. Last episode, 20, I started talking about choosing and using software to create your slide deck. I mentioned some of the top platforms such as Prezi, Google Slides, Canva, Keynote, Microsoft PowerPoint, and yes, there are more. Go do a search and you can waste half the day figuring out which is better for you. But please go back and listen to that episode 20 if you haven't yet. At the end, I sort of finished a rant on keeping things simple and ended up with rule 4. So here's rule 5. Rule number 5. Should have had a drum roll or something right there. Never, ever, 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 never read your slides. Rule 6. Did I go with that hard enough for you? Don't ever just read your slides. Rule 6. Bullet points are good, paragraphs are bad. When I see paragraphs, we know the speaker is likely going to read slides, and I get a little tick, but that's okay. One exception is when you must present legal or technical information, and you have to leave it on the screen long enough for your audience to see it or read it or appreciate it or whatever. But again, make it simple. Back to rule 5. If you read the whole thing, unless it's required, it's bad. Think of it this way. Consider sitting through a 20-minute presentation where the slides are read verbatim. Why do we need you? Bullet points, folks, bullet points. Okay, now that we're past that, and by the way, if you need help with all that, hit us up at thewebinarguy.com. We can help you create the decks, fix your decks, do training for on-screen or actual on-stage work. We got you covered. All right. Generally speaking, a dark background with light text is preferred, especially when the presentation is longer or when live is in a darker room, when a live session is in a darker room. It reduces eye fatigue for your audience. They will appreciate that, but not even know it. Use appropriate fonts. Again, I talked earlier in the last episode about being cute with your presentation. Well, cute fonts are bad. Every time I see a cute font that it's like, I can't read it. Well, what's the point of having it there? And sans serif fonts are better in my opinion. And if you don't know what those are, go look it up. Next, I'm going to talk about the way to think about your presentation. Some people write a script, hone that in, and then create a slide deck. Some people know the deck they want to create visually, and then they write a script to support it. And I'm more likely in the hybrid of something like that. I bounce back and forth. And by the way, if I don't mention practicing your script, practice your script. But Grant, you say, I know my content. Why should I write a script? Because, just like for this series, I don't want to forget a point that I need to make. I'm not saying you have to read it off a teleprompter, but you could. But writing it out and planning your presentation around that is just good practice. It'll help you find holes in logic, missteps that you've gone over, and more. I write all of my scripts for these sessions, and I go through them usually 2 to 3 times, and every time I adjust it a little bit until you get what I am doing on a teleprompter right now, because I don't want to miss anything, get excited, and forget that I should tell you what my website address is. When you start putting your presentation together, here's a couple questions to consider beyond the rules above. First, like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, begin with the end in mind. How do you want your audience to feel at the end of your presentation or webinar? Next question, why should your audience care? Now, if you've invited a built-in social media audience or promoted correctly and well, this is probably less of an issue because they already know what they want coming in and you've already kind of told them what they're going to get. but answer that question. If your planned content can't answer the question, then start over or adjust. Finally, and I think most importantly, what is it you want your audience to do at the end of your presentation or webinar? Buy something, sign up for something, take an action, fill out a form. What is it? Your whole presentation has to be leading to this moment. If not, you're wandering around and your audience will also be lost trying to follow you. Your points, your slides, your images, everything has to be working toward your CTA. What's that? Well, a CTA is your call to action. Click the button now. Join our expanded webinar. Call your mom. Sorry, tossed that one in for free. Get your CTA lined up and your presentation should point to it. A lukewarm presentation with a lukewarm presenter and a lukewarm CTA will get you what kind of results? Well, if your audience is still awake or even still on the call or the Zoom webinar or the virtual meeting, you're going to have a lukewarm response at best, and you may have crickets. If you need help with your presentation, one needs evaluated, you need training on slide decks or presentation skills, please hit thewebinarguy.com. Use our contact form to request help. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. This series is for smaller organizations and smaller entrepreneurs. Smaller organizations and solopreneurs. Sometimes it doesn't help if you have a teleprompter that may or may not be tech savvy, don't know all the steps, or don't want to know all the steps. And over the series, I'm going to lead you through all the significant decisions and capabilities you'll need to Zoom to webinar success. And as always, if you need help now, don't hesitate to reach out to webinarpro@thewebinarguy.com. Thanks for watching. Would love to hear your questions and comments. And if you're listening to the podcast audio, thanks for listening. Tell a friend.